Welcome back to Normalized PTSD. Today we're going to chat with Chad. Chad's a veteran as well as a former police officer, and he's going to share his story of how he found peace of mind. It all started with getting reconnected with his childhood religion, and then after that, just getting a little bit more involved with that. So hopefully, him sharing his stories is as beneficial for you as it was for me. And without any more chitty chat, here we go.
Welcome, Chad. Thank you for jumping on, man. I really appreciate it. It's been years since I've seen you, and I'm excited, one, to talk to you, and then, two, just listen to your story. And I know you might have listened to maybe the first one or whatever, but I know your story has a bit more religion, so I will do my best to be as PC as possible.
Yeah, it does have a little bit of religion in there too. I guess a religion that I refound
Right?
is the
Yeah.
best way to put it. Yeah. So
Okay. Well, we'll just start with who you are, like who's Chad? Like early days Chad. Like how did you start, begin, and get into the career field that you picked out?
well, my name's Chad. I grew up in a small town. I look kind of like you. I grew up in a small town. Mine was in South Carolina. My dad too was a police officer for God as long as I can remember. Um, he retired a few years ago from that. Uh, from my understanding, his father was a police officer. My brother was a state trooper for a while. I just kind of felt like the police side of it was in my blood. Um, Grew up, like I said, small town, small high school. Nothing spectacular about me. I wasn't the best student, but I wasn't the worst student. I was, kind of there in the middle somewhere, and wasn't a jock. Wasn't one of those guys that could get a scholarship. I wasn't that good. I did do some sports in high school, but other than that, it was just I guess the average childhood. Then I knew from the very beginning, as far back as I can remember, that I wanted to join the Air Force. So right out of high school, joined the Air Force. Did that for about 8 years. Um, then decided I was done. I was a heavy equipment mechanic the first 8 years, and then I decided I was done with that and moved back to South Carolina. Got picked up as a corrections officer in Horry County for a few months until Myrtle Beach called me, and they hired me as a police officer in the city of Myrtle Beach. And that's kind of where that started out. Like I said, it felt like it was in my blood to just do that, no matter how many times my dad tried to talk me out of it.
Yeah, it definitely
So,
sounds like you had some blue blood in you. About every
uh,
it's the lineage. It's a
yep,
lot of police officers. That's big. Interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, a lot of blue blood. But I've noticed that with anybody who ever says they want to be a police officer, you will not talk them out of it. They have to give it a shot, and if they like it, they love it, and if they don't, then they quit. Um, but and I was one of those that just, I mean, there was more to it than just me not liking it. Obviously, an incident I got involved in kind of pushed me to get away from it again. But yeah, like I said, it's one of those things where you either like it, you either love it or you hate it. That's kind of the way I look at police work. So, um,
Right. I almost feel like you can say the same about military lifestyle too.
yeah, I believe you can. You either love it or hate it, and there's usually no in between. With all the military folks I've ever known over my entire career, that seemed to be the case. So, but
Looking back on that time as a police officer and in the military, uh, like, did you enjoy it? I know we crossed paths in EOD there at Charleston. In EOD, I think everybody loved EOD, but what about police officer? Like, and like, what do you do now too?
so yeah, like I said, the police job. I found myself missing the military when I was a police officer. Um, Tried to get back in. The the only careers they offered me to come back in to reenlist back into the Air Force were EOD, Special Forces, and believe it or not, band. Yeah, I was like, oh,
You
band, but yeah, that one kind of shocked me.
want to play? You want to play some
I,
jazz?
I
Yeah.
I wanted to do that, but I was like, I'm not that good. So, but I'd looked at EOD the first time when I first enlisted in the military, and I turned it down simply because the folks at basic training wouldn't let me make a little short phone call to tell my family I was going to be home a little later than anticipated. Uh, so that's the reason I originally turned down EOD. So when it came up again, I said sure. Just so happened that the recruiter I was talking to was an active duty recruiter. He was a badge wearer. He had his crab, and yeah, so he had been one of those. It was the late, it was early 2000s is when they started forcing people out of career fields into recruiting. And he was one of those that got caught up in that. And so I talked to him, and originally, well, the active duty side turned me down because of a security clearance issue that they couldn't resolve, which is why I ended up in the reserves, because the reserves could resolve that issue. And it's kind of shocking, but that's how I ended up in EOD. And I have to say that the people I met in EOD overall, I mean, there are a few bad apples, but overall, they turned into my family. And I mean, you know that from dealing with EOD guys, you kind of get this bond with
Oh
the
yeah.
guys you work with, and they're like your brother from that point on. So, um,
Yeah. Well, I think my buddy Kip, he hit on it probably the best that I've heard. And it's like, he has friends. And when he sees his friends, it'd be like a side hug, you know. But when you see like a former EOD guy, it's like you're lucky if you stay on your feet. And like the hug's coming in down as hard as it can. It's just the love there's always been pretty amazing. I
yeah,
love it.
that's it. EOD guys are, to hear my wife put it, we're a special breed. Well, a little bit of crazy, but it's it's just it's just funny how tight we all are. I tell my kids, I was like, there's probably not a place on this planet that I could go and not have a place to lay my head. All I got to do is, hey, I'm an EOD guy, and there's probably another one running around there that'll give me a place to sleep. It's just without even knowing each other, you see that badge and you just you automatically connect. It's kind of odd, but yeah, I miss some of the EOD stuff. And a lot of the people. Uh, I don't miss any of the
Yeah.
police work in Myrtle Beach. I do miss some of the guys I work with, um, but the job itself, uh, no. There's nothing about it I miss.
I was going to hit on that. It seems like uh, in the military in EOD, we had a lot of camaraderie and the group was tight. Did you have the same thing in the police over there, or was it more of harder connections, so like harder to make those connections at that personal level?
So I made a lot of good connections in Myrtle Beach. They're not nearly as close as my EOD brothers and sisters. But I am close to a lot of guys from Myrtle Beach. Um, like I said, is the job itself was horrible, but the guys I worked with, they were awesome. Matter of fact, I just met up with three of my former coworkers about a month ago. They just happened to be in Charleston, and we're like, yeah, we got to get together. So it was almost like we never even lost that time between when we had seen each other last. We just picked right up right where we had left off. So it wasn't as close as the military side of it, but the people I worked with in Myrtle Beach, we were pretty close. Yeah.
I mean, you can go into as much detail or as little as you want to, but I just want to poke a little bit. Why was the Myrtle Beach job so bad? Like, in your opinion, why did you left, never looked back, kind of
So,
thing?
well, I mean, there's a couple of different things there. I can get into the incident that I was involved in that kind of started my PTSD. That's part of it.
Well, I was gonna say, I know that we all have stories and stuff like that, but I know it's also emotionally triggering for a lot of people to talk about it. So if you don't want to, I'm okay if you don't. That's not something that we need to share, have to share. But if you want to get into it, I mean, this is your show. You can talk about anything you want to. You know what I mean? Because the listeners don't like we know each other from EOD, but your experience and trauma actually comes from being a police officer, which is why I really wanted to talk to you because I feel like there's a problem across the board, with nurses, doctors, firefighter, police department, and veterans. Everybody knows about veterans because we get a lot of attention. The only attention police officers seem to get is negative. I mean, it's pretty overwhelming, and I don't want to I like to avoid politics, but I feel like if you demonize a group of people so much, you're gonna eventually squeeze out the good ones. But anyways, so yeah, it's your show. I'm listening.
So we'll start with the easy stuff first. Why I left Myrtle Beach. The easy part is, and I don't know a police officer that can't tell you this, is if you really look back at that job, at a police officer's job, you deal with the bottom percentage of humanity on a regular basis. That's all you ever see, is like that bottom 1 or 2% of humanity. I mean the people that I refer to as the scum of the earth, and that's all you see is that hate, that negativity, the constant fighting, the shooting, the children getting caught in the middle of all this, being hurt, prostitutes, and the first prostitute I ever arrested, she was a 16-year-old runaway girl who had decided to sell herself into the sex trade, and it was just that's all you see, 40 plus hours a week. So it's kind of hard to shut it off. In the EOD world, on the military side, we go overseas, we do a thing, and then we come back home. It's a little bit easier to shut it off. You don't completely shut it off, but it's not right in your face. But as a police officer, even when you're off duty, you're driving down the road, in your hometown, and you see that guy who just beat his wife 2 days ago, or you see that kid that, was just beat up a month ago. There's constant reminders of it. There is no getting away from it. You go to the grocery store and, there's some guy who, you happen to know is a child predator, and it's just right in your face all the time. So you get really bitter really quick. And you don't realize it, but I walked away and I looked back at it. When I first looked back at it, it was, I caught myself saying, I hate everybody, just because people are horrible. They're horrible to each other, and they don't, nobody watches out for anybody, and that's kind of where I've gotten. But that was the easy part to talk about with leaving the job. The hard part, and sometimes I do get emotional about it, is so I actually started with the city of Myrtle Beach in 2003. I ended my training. All of my training was done in January of 2004, so early January 2004. Well, and this incident that I'm going to talk about is a shooting incident, and you'll see how much it's burned into my head. So this is from 2004, and it's so burned into my head, I'm going to give you all of the details. So the details are February 1st at 3:33 a.m. at 302 2nd Avenue South in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, 29577, apartment 3. 3 officers entered a room and caught the tail end of a man who had stabbed a woman 57 times. He came running out at us, and we shot him 12 times. To remember all those numbers, that's how it's burned into my brain. What was bad about it for me was when I was a corrections officer for a couple months, the gentleman that we just shot, he was an inmate in the facility I was working, and I knew him. I knew his name. I'd never had any issues with him. He was always polite to all the officers, and then the next time I see him, he's laying. I mean, literally, this guy landed on my feet and died on top of my feet. And so the last thing he saw in life was my face. And I watched the life drain from his. So, that stayed with me for a long time. And that was kind of, I guess, the straw that broke the camel's back, where I was like, I got to leave this job. It's just too much. Um, I mean, here I am. I'm not even a year into my job, and now I have used every tool on my Batman belt. Uh, some officers go 20, 30 years and they'll never draw that gun. And here I am, a month out of training, and I've already killed a man. So it was tough. I will give the city of Myrtle Beach some credit. They took care of us as much as they could. They hired us a what they call was a counselor. I'll call him a quack. I won't say his name, but he was as worthless as they could be. To him, he tried to he tried to say that it was because my daddy didn't tell me he loved me enough and this and that, and I was like, no, that's not the problem. The problem is I shot and killed someone. So, um, but that's why I left the job. Yeah.
I just want to hit on that. That's something that really irritates me to death is some of the psych, I guess the treatment that we get, whether it's the military, I see it with hospitals. I got talked to a nurse recently, had the same experience. And I mean, I went in to get evaluated for my PTSD like when I separated and the guy compared me to a child touching a hot stove and I just absolutely lost it. I was like I see the correlation that he was trying to make, but I just didn't understand why he would use something so demeaning in that way. And if you want to go back and listen to Tip's episode, I think he talks about how he first tried and then his first therapist was one just so uninformed, didn't have any idea what he was doing. And I feel like a lot of times they treat PTSD, especially with first responders and combat veterans and stuff like that, with like the same way that they would treat a child. A child that experienced some sort of traumatic event. And it's like, man, like I don't see it that way. I think the people that get into the careers that we do are already mentally strong people for the most part. They're tough, and to break that toughness isn't the same. Like I feel like it's something completely different. I was gonna hit on the help that you received. Like, how hard was it to get help from the police? Because I don't know anything about that. I know like on the veteran side of the house, you have the VA, and it's like federally funded and easy to get to. But when you're talking in that situation, like that PTSD is with you forever, whether or not you're in Myrtle Beach or not. But is the help and benefits you received localized to the city level, state level, federal level? Like, how does that work?
On the civilian side of things, like you said, with the veteran side, we got a lot. We got the VA and things like that. We got programs out there. I don't know of a single program that's designed for police officers and first responders that cities and counties and stuff pay for. It's usually, oh, you have mental health coverage through your insurances, and that's what I hear most of the time. I can speak on the federal level with customs. We actually have a program. Um, they actually they have several programs that if you need somebody to talk to for a traumatic event, they find a way to kind of help you get to someone. To include like you can get a certain amount of mental health visits if you feel like you need them. The downside of it, at least at our job, is if you mention PTSD in the federal world, at least from my experience, they automatically think you are unfit for duty. If you carry a gun, they're like, oh, we got to take your gun. We got to put you behind a desk. So a lot of people hide it, and it's sad.
100%. We did it in the military. I know cops that do it. I know nurses that do it. And it's the same thing. It's an internal mental health program that is set up that if you try to get help, you're fired. You lose your job, and then it's you said that it's covered under insurance. I believe that was for the state level, and you only have an insurance while
Exactly.
you have a job. So if you don't have the job, then you don't have the insurance to cover the mental health that you need. But yeah, I'm just man, that's so mind blowing. But all right, continue. I'm all ears. So what kind of indicators did you see in your life that kind of like gave red flags, saying like, hey, I think there's something, this situation impacted me on a little bit deeper level, and it's starting to impact my personal life, my family. Like, did you have anything that kind of like stood out that you're like, okay, I need to get more help, or was it pretty immediate?
So for a number of years, it's probably about 8 or 9 years, my wife had a lot of medical issues, to include some mental health issues going on, and I found myself angry, and I just kind of assumed that I was angry because I was having to put up with everything, and I'm trying to go to doctors and get her mental health help, and get her some help for physical things that were going on, and I kind of attributed that anger to dealing with what she was going through, and then the the first red flag was my wife and I and the kids. We went to Myrtle Beach, and we walked on the boulevard, and I don't say no to my wife. I don't tell her you can't do this and you can do that. That's not me. She and I have this relationship where
Sounds like a good husband.
yeah, I know my place. But she told me she was going to do something, and without missing a beat, I just looked at her and said, "No, you're not." And she gave me this look like, "Okay, who are you, and why are you telling me no?" And so that was kind of the first indicator that something was off. And so, like I said, I was dealing with a lot of stuff with her. And then when all of that stuff kind of started getting better, when she started getting the help she needed, and it was kind of going away, I noticed that my anger wasn't going away, So I was like, okay, there must be something more to this. And this was about the time that EOD had, at least at Seymour Johnson, I don't know about the rest of the bases, I was assigned as an AGR there at Seymour Johnson. I worked with the active duty guys every day, and we had a mental health counselor assigned to us. So she would come over once a week and PT with us. And so I got to talking to her, and I said, I think I need to talk to you professionally. And she said, okay, let's talk. So she got me in her office, and as counselors do, she got me to open up. And I'm going to tell you, normally I don't say this about mental health counselors, but Beth was awesome. I will never forget Beth. She didn't tiptoe around me. She kind of had been around us EOD guys long enough to know, okay, they're tough. They can take a little bit, let me talk to this guy. And so she talked to me. And so after a few sessions, she just outright looked at me and said, what's the problem? What are you scared of? And I told her, I grew up in church, in a Baptist church. And, you get told your whole life in church that you don't kill, you don't murder, you don't take a life. And, that's how I looked at myself, as a murderer, because I'd taken this human life. And that's what I told her. I said, I'm a murderer. I'm no better than any other mass murderer you'd see out there. I'm a murderer. And she said, that's not the case. She said, so what does that tell you? I said, it tells me I'm going to hell. And I don't want to go to hell. I had already started going back to church. Someone had invited us to church a few months prior. So I'd started going to church, and she said, you go to church, right? And I said, yes. She said, have you talked to your pastor? And I said, no. And she said, why not? And I said, because I'm hard-headed, I guess. I don't know. And she said, talk to your pastor. She said, because it's not something I can help you with in the mental health department of the hospital. She said, this is about your religion, about your faith. and that's who you need to go to. And so I took her advice, and I went to the pastor, and I said, I need to talk to you. I will never forget Ira. Ira was my pastor at the time. In a small little Pentecostal church in Goldsboro, North Carolina, United in Christ. Hated leaving that place when I moved to Charleston, but I went to him and I said, I need to talk to you. And I spilled the beans to him. And let me tell you, I cried like a little baby. I mean, one of those cries like when you were little and you got hurt and you were just snot running out of your nose kind of crying. That was me in his office, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. But that was me. And all he did was look at me, and he said, do you know the story of the Apostle Paul? I said, well, it's been a while. Can you refresh my memory? And he said, so you know Paul, and he said, Paul used to be Saul. And he said, don't forget David. He goes, all those men in the Bible killed people. They killed thousands of people. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, God forgave them. What's the problem? I said, I took a life. He said, so did they. And God forgave them. He said, you took your life. He said, did you do it out of hate? I was like, no, I did it because it's my job. He goes, so you did it to protect others? I said, yeah. He said, then I have no doubt if Jesus Christ himself was sitting in that chair beside you, that he'd forgive you. I literally walked out of his office feeling like you had taken the weight of the world off of me. Up until that point, I had nightmares frequently that the guy I'd shot was standing beside my bed. I'd wake up thinking he was getting ready to kill me. I've cleared my house with my gun several times. All of those things went away, like immediately. And that was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And I haven't had a single nightmare since. So after that happened, I mean, there was some other stuff that happened, but after that happened, I really got into my religion, my faith. And I kind of started turning to God for more. Like I said earlier, my wife was sick. So I turned to him and I was like, can you please just do something? And I was angry. I yelled. I've been driving down the road in my truck. I tell the kids now, I don't pray. I have conversations with God, like he's sitting right there beside me. And I yell. I get it out. I'm like, listen, I am mad at you right now because you're doing X, Y, and Z. And so many things have changed in my life since those conversations began. And, Mike picks on me all the time. Mike, but Mike picks on me all the time, about, maybe it's a coincidence or maybe it's this or that. And I'm like, Mike, there's no way that all those times happened and they were all coincidences. And I tell him, I'm like, listen, I won't preach to you. That's you believe what you want to believe, Mike. But he doesn't like talk down to me. He doesn't try to put me down for my religion. It's just me and Mike. We rib each other about everything we can. He's one of my best friends. And I know that if I needed to talk to him, I could. He'd be serious with me. But, he picks on me sometimes about it. But the truth is there's so many things that have happened. One or two things I could chalk up to coincidence, but when you have 7 or 8 things happen in your life that there's no other way to explain it than something bigger than you, you start believing a lot more at that point. And you're like, okay, you got my attention now. So what do you need me to do? So I really jumped into my religion. I got a little book in the house, and it's the name of it's Where to Go in the Bible When. And you open it up, and it's got all these different things, like when you're having anxiety, when you're having depression, when you're, questioning your faith and things like that. And so I opened it all. The crease of the book's almost worn out because I opened it up so much. It tells me where to go in the Bible to kind of get that inspiration that I need, that I need to hear. And like I said, once I kind of, I guess, turned my life over to Christ, I got saved, I got baptized again. Once I did all that, life changed. Um, my wife got better. The nightmares stopped. I still think about the incident sometimes, but all of it changed. Um, and at some point, and I can never figure out how these two things got connected. There was a young Army EOD guy that was killed in Afghanistan, and I won't go into the details of what happened to him, but he was killed in Afghanistan, and he went through school with me. And when I heard about his death, somehow it connected to my PTSD, what was going on already. So that's the only incident that happens now that I can't handle. Like if my wife brings up his name or something that he and I did, she doesn't do it on purpose. She'll forget who it is. I will get up and walk away from the dinner table, and she immediately knows. Oh, I screwed up. I shouldn't have said that. But everything else just got better. Life got easier. I my house, my everything. I told one of my kids the other day, I said, the story of Job, right? And they're like, yeah, Job suffered all this, and he was rewarded with double. I was like, that's me. I said, look at my life. Everything's doubled in my life. And, not exactly, not literally, but that's what it seems like to me. And that's what happened after I kind of turned back to my religion, to my faith that I'd lost, when I was younger. And that's kind of how I got through it. That's kind of my story. Like, that's where I found my help. But I also, I also talked to my family about it. All my family knows the story of what happened. Even the kids, I've explained it to the level that I can explain it to them so that they understand it. But they know. All of them know Dad was involved in something. They know what I was involved in, and they know I struggle with it. And probably probably one of the things that helps me a lot, and has always helped me, I have to give my wife credit. This woman here, she's put up with the nightmares. She's put up with the anger. I've almost hit her in my sleep because I feel like I'm trying to fight somebody. But she's put up with it all, and the only thing she does to calm me down is she'll sit down on the couch and say, "Put your head in my lap and let me rub your head." And it calms me right down. And so I have to give her a lot of credit for putting up with the crap she put up with. And EOD shenanigans and all that stuff. She put up with those and the cop shenanigans when I was a cop. So, I put the woman through the ringer, and she stayed. So, I got to give her something.
Just trying to think. It sounds like, I have an incident or a couple in my background that are like moral injuries in a sense, where something happened that impacted my morality. And like, I have a lot of the similar background that you did. I was raised Southern Baptist, and it was like, thou shalt not kill. And so when I saw life be taken that was innocent, like, it really impacted me on a pretty significant level too. But it sounds like through your religion and your pastor, you're able to like really find peace with that.
I did. I found a lot of peace once, to say it in the church terms, when I turned it all over to Christ, I found a lot of peace.
In addition to like, finding peace through religion, kind of sounds like you have a really strong support structure. You got family. Mike teases us all, and I love it. I love Mike to death, and if I ever want to laugh, I just give him a call and we talk hours. And then your family's there and supportive. Like, that's phenomenal. I think with that support structure and everybody understanding where you're at, That really does help. And then the book that you mentioned, I'm likely going to try to put that in the show notes or something like that, because anytime anybody mentions something that's usually helpful, I like to throw it up there, because anyone that's religious doing, finding peace through religion, then maybe they can check out that book and do some of the same things.
Yeah, and you mentioned having that support system at home. And I didn't even think about this, but as an AGR, I mean, you know as well as I know, I was part of the who gets to come in the unit. I had to interview everybody, and every single person that come before me, one of the questions was, do you have a support system at home? Because I knew what the men and women of the EMD were facing. And I knew, what the toll it can take on you. And if they told me they didn't, I looked at them and was like, this is not the job for you. This is not where you need to be, because this is going to be tough. So, yeah, I kind of, I lucked out with my support system. It's, I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. And I think I got put where I'm at, met the people that I met, because, there's a reason behind it. Like this podcast you're doing, you got put through the ringer and it led you to this podcast. And I believe that, I believe your idea is going to help a lot of people. And like I told you via text, if it helps one, then it was worth the time and effort you put into it. Yeah. So
100%, yeah. I agree. Just want anything to slow down that suicide rate, I think is amazing. So if it means me putting myself out there, and I really appreciate all the people that come on and put themselves out there, because that's why we're wanting to do it. We all have friends or acquaintances that we know of have, taken their own lives, and we're like, man, they're a permanent solution for a temporary problem. I feel like there's more. I know that there's more that we could do as a society, but I don't know how to fix it big picture. So we're just trying to start where I can. But you're also doing something similar. You mentioned earlier at work. You're the veteran support person. You mind touching on that a little bit more?
Like I said earlier, Customs, that's who I work for now. Customs decided that, well, actually, it started with the Border Patrol. Actually, there was a veteran with the Border Patrol out in Texas. I think he was a former Marine. He saw a need, because between the Border Patrol and U.S. Customs, there are tons of veterans. I think here in Charleston, I think the port's made up of probably 90 to 95% veterans. And he saw that the veterans weren't getting the support they needed, that there was something missing. And so they developed this program. I mean, it went all the way to D.C., and it had senators sign off on it, all of this. And so they developed this program where they train individuals to kind of be the guide for those veterans. Like, no matter what that problem is you need help with, we're here to help you. To include mental health counseling. It's just, I'm not a counselor, but if somebody just needs a shoulder to cry on for a minute, I'm trained to do that. Just sit there and listen to them and, guide them in the direction they need to be guided, to give them, whatever support they needed. And so as a veteran, that was important to me. So they developed this program, and so it comes down to anything that the veterans need, whether it be filing a claim with a VA, shoulder to cry on, whatever. They come to me. I'm one of three in the Port of Charleston that are trained, and it's amazing how many veterans out there have questions about just their benefits, basic benefits. And not only those veterans, but their families. I just had a woman come see me 2 weeks ago. She had asked me a while back how would her, I think it was her uncle. He was a Vietnam veteran. how would he get support? Like, how would he get benefits? How would he do certain things? And I told her, I said, he needs to go see this person. And, it's every, like, government office, like in the state of South Carolina, every county office has a veteran program in it. So I told her, I said, tell him to go see this person. And I knew their name. Go see this person at this place and see if they can help you. And if they can't help you, then you need to go to the VFW and talk to those guys. Even if you're not a member, go talk to them because they can help you. And so she came to me a couple of weeks ago and she said, thank you. And I said, for what? She said, my dad or my uncle went from 0% to 100%. And I was like, well, what did I do? She said, I sent him to talk to those people, and apparently he was more broken than what he thought he was. And I said, really? And she goes, yeah. She said, not only is he 100% now, but he's getting some help for some stuff he needs help with, and they've put him on some medicines for some things that happened. And she said, so he's actually being taken care of now. And I said, that's exactly why I do this, is to get the veterans out there that need help. Because, I mean, I know you've probably navigated the VA. It is a nightmare. And so what happens is a lot of guys and men and women, they give up. They're like, I don't want to fight this anymore. And so they give up and they let the VA win. And, I've got a couple more I'm working on that's where they're at. They're tired of fighting. They just kind of want to roll over and give up. And I'm like, no, we're not giving up. We're going to get you what you deserve. You deserve to be helped, whether it's, compensation for whatever you're doing or the help that you need, that counselor you need, that new leg you need, whatever it is, So I'm one of those people that will, like, listen, we're going to talk to this guy today, and I'll grab you by the hand and drag you if I need to. But I want to see all those people get help. And so I put a lot of work into it. I've got the port director and assistant port director here at Charleston. They know exactly who I am. They're like, yep, that's the veteran guy. So I've put my name out there, and everybody, all the way up, all of the supervisors know he's a bulldog. That I will not stop fighting for that veteran because you owe him this. And so that's the effort I put into it. I honestly do put myself on the line a lot, and I probably should watch my mouth. Somebody's going to take me up on the offer one day, but I kind of look at it that way. Like, if we're not that aggressive with them, then we won't get what we deserve. Not just the veterans, but the first responders. All of us who put ourselves in harm's way in some way, shape, or form. If we're not aggressive about what we deserve, the treatments we need, then they're just going to walk all over us. And so I put a lot of effort into being as aggressive as I can. I guess that's one of my powers is I know where to stop. I can see the line, and when I'm about to cross it, I'll just stop short. But that's the program itself. The Veteran Support Program is only about 3 years old, I believe, maybe 4. But it's to the point now where other departments in the government are seeing the need for it, and they actually just stole our program manager. The State Department just stole our program manager to go over and start the program for the State Department. So it's moving from the Department of Homeland Security. It's growing into the State Department now. So it's good to hear, that the program actually grew that big that quick. So that's the Veteran Support Program.
That veteran support program, that's just for.
Yeah, so it's for so anybody who works for Customs and Border Protection. Actually, I can bleed over into Border Patrol because we all fall under U.S. Customs and Border Protection. But yeah, they tell us to try to limit it. But if I see a veteran that needs help, I'm sorry. If I've got resources to give that veteran, they're getting them.
I think that covers about everything. I just wanted to, the one thing that was sticking out to me is that, with your family history and everybody being former police officers, did that help or hinder? I'm imagining help because I'm sure they have similar situations in some way, that they were able to be supportive.
So, my dad being a cop in a small town, I jokingly refer to him as Andy Griffith. I mean, that's the kind of town I grew up in. I'm sure he drew his weapon at some point in his career, but he never had to deal with anything like that. But he knew that possibility was there. So when I come to him and told him what happened, he didn't jump right in and go, well, that's the way it goes. I mean, he wasn't rough about it, but he wasn't, uh, he couldn't really give me that perspective from the way he handled it because he had never dealt with it. But he supported me. When I broke down in tears, I was brought up, boys don't cry. That was kind of the way I was brought up. And but when I broke down about it, he didn't talk down to me because he knew how big of a deal it was. My brother, he never got that. I mean, he got into some incidences as a trooper, but never had to fire his weapon and take a life. But he also, he's like, okay, that's a big deal. They kind of backed off on that boys don't cry thing, and if I needed a hug from my brother, he gave me a hug. But they couldn't speak from a standpoint of having gone through it, but they could kind of empathize with me in the fact that that's tough. You did something that most police officers either never do and every police officer I've ever known never wants to do. And so they knew, like, you have done it. You have done everything in this career that can be done, and it wasn't like a hooray for you. It was like, that sucks. You have done everything this career has to offer. I'm sorry. It was, but my family was very supportive of it. So they were more supportive. I think it was more from the religious side of it than it was the being police officer side of it. I just think they knew I was going through a tough time, and that's kind of where that support came from. All of them came together and, like, what do you need? And I'm like, I just need a shoulder to cry on sometimes. That's it.
Yeah, well, that's awesome that you had it for sure. That's amazing. A lot of people don't, and that's another thing that I hope that this creates is some sort of society or group. Like, well, those that don't have a support structure can reach out and be like, hey, there's people there that have relatability, and be like, hey, we'll talk story all day. So I'm gonna wrap this up in full circle. Like, if you were to start over, if you had to, like, go to the very beginning, like the day after trauma, and you were to talk to yourself and set yourself up for success to do this better, like, around, what would you do differently if you could do anything differently with getting help and getting back to being the amazing, awesome husband and father?
I don't really know. Um, I think I had to go through it to make me who I am. I think I had to go through every step that I went through. I might have went and saw a counselor sooner. But I don't know. Honestly, I don't know that I would change anything because I kind of feel like having to go through that whole process, it it made me look at life differently. It just kind of developed who I became, um, and led to the life I'm leading now. And like I said earlier, my life's great. It's beautiful home, beautiful family, and here I am, grilling burgers on a Wednesday, a Tuesday. If I had to pick something though, it would be open up about it. Um, don't don't let that fear of, oh, somebody's going to think I'm a sissy, or they're going to look down on me for being weak. I wouldn't let that get in my way. I'd probably open up about it quicker. I think that's probably one of the biggest issues. Personally, from the guys I know that have dealt with things, that's one of the biggest issues. Is they're afraid they're going to be looked down upon, like they're less than a man. because they had emotions, and I think I let that get in my way a little bit. Um, so if I had to pick something, I would be like, it would be open up sooner. Make myself vulnerable sooner so I can get the help sooner. That would be my advice to anybody that has to go through anything. Hey, just open up about it. Talk to somebody. If it's your drinking buddy, your wife, whoever it is, talk to somebody about it. Get it off your chest.
Yeah, that's the most common thing that I hear. Like, and I can relate. It's definitely what I did. I ignored it for almost a decade, you know? And it's like, yeah, I wish I would have just swallowed my pride and been like, it doesn't make me weak getting help. It's actually the hardest thing I've ever done is trying to get through it. It's easy drinking those emotions away or, doing whatever you got to do to pretend it ain't there. Like, that stuff's the easy thing for me. Like, but yeah, man, I really appreciate you coming on and talking story with me.
Yeah, no problem, man. I will talk about this all day long, every day if I need to get people help. Just and if somebody's listening and they know me and they need to talk about something, please get in touch with me. I don't care. Um, uh, just like I said, if it helps one person, it's well worth it. Whatever we have to go through to get it. So
Awesome. Well, Chad, I'm going to be in Charleston probably in like 2 months. If you're in the local area, I'll hit you up and I'll probably be at Mike's house drinking old fashions if you want to come over and say hey.
definitely, man, definitely, we'll have to catch up.
Awesome. Thanks so much and you have a great day.
You too, man.
Bye.
And with that, we're going to wrap things up with Chad. Thank you for sticking through the audio on that one. This is one of my earlier recordings. It has improved. But yeah, with that, we're going to wrap it up here. Hope you guys have a good day. Latest.